Hello student, I'm Mr. Leung. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the questions in the textbook of chapter 13, Reproduction in Humans. And at the same time, I would like to clarify some misconception and also provide you an overall picture of the whole chapter. So let's take a look at this concept map. So in this chapter, actually, the three key processes are very important: ovulation, fertilization, and also implantation. Actually, all the knowledges, all the concepts are derived or relate to these three concepts. For example, we have the ovary to produce the ovum, and we have the testis to produce the sperm. Actually, sperm and the ovum, they will undergo the fertilization. And for these two sex organs, testis and ovary, so for the testis, they will produce the male sex hormone, and for the ovaries, they will produce the female sex hormone. Both of these two sex hormones, they are very important for the development of secondary sexual characteristic. And of course, before we talk about the secondary sexual characteristic, we talk about the primary sexual characteristic first. So for the body, how can we get ready for the reproduction? So we have these concepts. And then after the fertilization, there is the zygote to be formed. And for the zygote, it will undergo the mitotic cell division to develop into embryo. And for the embryo, they will undergo the implantation. And then for the pregnancy, after the embryo, they implant the uterine lining, form the placenta, and then later on to grow and develop into fetals. So for the placenta, we need to know the adaptive features, we need to know the functions. For example, for the placenta, it can be regarded as the small intestine, lungs, and the kidney. So we shall talk about it in details when we are doing the questions. And for the pregnancy, after we undergo the ovulation, fertilization, and implantation, all of these three processes, they are successful, so we shall get pregnant. And then we reverse the idea to talk about the contraceptive methods. Because if we can prevent either one of the process of ovulation, or fertilization, or implantation, and then we can prevent the pregnancy, and then there's a way for the birth control. So I hope that this concept map, can really help you to have a very brief or the general picture of this chapter. So let's take a look at the diagram. It's showing the male reproductive organ and PQRS, which one of them is involved or are involved in producing semen. So good practice: PQRS, P urinary bladder, Q seminal vesicle, R sperm duct, and then S urethra. So what you need to recall is the composition of the semen. It contains sperm and also the seminal fluid. So what you need to know is that PQRS, only Q is involved in the production or formation of the seminal fluid. So you may ask that for the semen, it also contains sperms, and sperms, they are produced by the testis. Sure, the testis will produce the sperm. However, for PQRS, there is no labeling for testis, unless there is another label for T, T for testis. So that's why the answer will be Q and T. But now there is only Q in this question, so that's why Q only. And that's the level 1 of the question. And then for the level 2, you need to recall the definition of the ejaculation. For the ejaculation, that means the ejection of the semen through the penis. And then some MC, they may ask you that, what if the testes are removed? So can the male still ejaculate? And the answer is yes. Even the testes are removed, the man can still ejaculate. However, in the semen, there is no sperm. So that's the overall concept for this MC question. And then let's take a look at the true or false question. So 1A, semen and sex hormone may pass through the urethra of the male. So of course this statement is false, because for the semen, of course, they will be ejected through the urethra in the penis. But for the sex hormone, we know that sex hormone is produced by the testes, and then they will be released to the bloodstream, because later on the blood will carry the sex hormone to the target organ and then trigger the secondary sexual characteristic. And then for statement B, a male can produce sperm continuously from puberty onwards. That's true. for the primary sexual characteristic, there are testes already. During puberty, so the testes, they start to work to produce the sperm, and then actually the male, they can still produce the sperm no matter when they are 70 years old or 80 years old or even 90 years old. So that's why theoretically the male can make a woman get pregnant even they are 70, 80, 90 years old. And for the second statement, a female is born with all the ovary she ever has in her life, and inside the ovary it contains all the immature follicle already, and then when they are experiencing the puberty, so they will start to develop the immature follicle to be the mature follicle, and then that will release the ovum to the oviduct. So that's why for the part B is true. And recall the diagram I showed you before. There is a picture, okay, a mother is bearing another baby girl, and in this baby girl, because they have the ovary already, in the ovaries there are the immature follicles. So that's why all three generations are together. And then for question 2, it's talking about the comparison between the human sperm cells and the human egg cells. So for the sperm cells, option A is talking about sperm cells contain mitochondria, and for the egg cell, it doesn't contain mitochondria. And absolutely wrong answer, because both of them, they need mitochondria to undergo the respiration and then release energy. So that's why both of them contain mitochondria. And then for the option B, which is the correct answer. So for sperm cells, they have higher mobility, so they can swim. But for the egg cell, it is just spherical, and they are not moving. They are moved by the beating action of the cilia in the oviduct, or they are moved by the contraction of the oviduct. So that's why the egg cannot move by themselves. And then for option C is wrong, because for the sperm cells, they should have less food reserve. But for the egg cell, they should have more food reserve, because the size of the sperm cells, we know that the size is much smaller than the egg cell. So that's why they only have a very little amount, small amount of the food reserve. So that's why the sperm cell, they really rely on the seminal fluid to provide them the nutrients. And then for option D is also wrong. Sperm cells contains fewer chromosomes and egg cell contains more chromosomes. It's wrong. Why? Because both of them, they should contain the haploid chromosome, also 1N. So that's why for the 1N sperm fertilized with the 1N egg cell, so later on they will have the diploid chromosome number restored. And then for the first question, if fertilization does not occur, so which route in the female reproductive system will an ovum follow after ovulation? So at least we know that if fertilization doesn't occur, so the ovum will die, and then the dead ovum with the broken down uterine lining will be released or will be removed, okay, through the vagina. So that's why for the last step, okay, it should be the vagina. A, B, C could be the answer. And then for the ovum, okay, ovum is released from the ovary to the oviduct. So that's why for the first starting point, it will be the oviduct. So and then A is also wrong. But for B and C, so we can take a look the route. So for the part B, okay, the ovum is released from the ovary to the oviduct, and then it travels to the cervix and then go back to the uterus. It doesn't make sense, okay? So that's why the answer is C. The ovum is released to the oviduct, and then they travel to the uterus and then go to the opening of the uterus, that's the cervix, and then go to the vagina, and then being released with the menstrual flow. For question 2, it's talking about the change of the uterine lining thickness of a pregnant woman from the beginning of last menstruation to the time before childbirth. So we can see that in this diagram, the first thing I would like to mention is about the 40-week pregnancy. 40 weeks, 40 weeks, 40 weeks, 40 weeks, okay? And then we need to know that what is the beginning, okay? What is the starting point? The starting point is the beginning of the last menstruation. So that's why we need to see the drop of the thickness of the uterine lining. So that's why for A and B, they are not the answer. Or B and C, we take a look at C first. So you can see that the thickness of the uterine lining of graph C seems like a fluctuation, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It doesn't make sense. So because when the embryo implant itself to the uterine lining, so later on there will be a placenta. And for the placenta, okay, it will maintain a certain thickness, okay, throughout the pregnancy. So that's why it should not be there should not be any fluctuation there, okay. So that's why the answer is B. So the thickness of the uterine lining will be maintained, okay, until the end of the 40 weeks. Okay, so let's take a look at the short question. Question A, when the sperm cells reach an egg cell, M site are released from the head of the sperm. So what we need to do is to give the reason, okay, for the release of this M size. So you can take a look at here. So when the sperm meets the ovum, so in the oviduct, so the sperm will release the M site from the alcosome, that's from the head of the sperm, for what? To digest the jelly coat of the ovum. So that's why the head of the sperm, they can enter the cytoplasm of the ovum for the fertilization. And then for question B, describe what happens in the egg cell once the sperm cell's nucleus has entered the ovum. So when there is a sperm cells, the nucleus, the head enter the egg cell, so that's why what you can see is that when the nuclei of the sperm, okay, and the ovum fuse together, when the nuclei of the sperm and the egg fuse together, that means for the fertilization, so the jelly coat will become impenetratable to other sperms. So it can prevent other sperms from entering the ovum again, and then lead to multiple fertilization. Because for one end sperm fertilize one end egg, so there should be diploid, okay, of the zygote. That's already very good, okay. So that's why if one more sperm, two more sperm, okay, they also come here for the fertilization, there will be 3N, 4N, 5N for the zygote. It's not favorable. And then for this question, we are talking about different events, okay, that take place after fertilization. So we need to arrange them in the correct order. So the first thing I would like to mention is that after fertilization, sperm, egg, they fuse together and then they will form the zygote, fertilized egg. And then for the zygote, it will undergo the mitotic cell division to form embryo, and the embryo will undergo the implantation, merge or embed itself to the uterine lining and then merge with mother, and then finally it will develop into fetus. So that's why for 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, so the very first idea is the development of a ball of cells. That means the embryo. So that's why number one, okay, A, B could be the answer. And then for the second step, okay, so for the embryo is already ready for the implantation. So that's why actually the answer is A. After implantation, so there will be the formation of the placenta, and then later on when the embryo can absorb more nutrients from mother, so they will undergo the cell enlargement, not only the cell division but also cell enlargement and cell differentiation, and finally they will become the fetus. And then for the second question is talking about the cross section of the umbilical cord. So for the very first idea for the good practice, in this part we can see the blood vessel X, blood vessel Y, and then we can label them blood vessel X, umbilical artery, and for blood vessel Y, umbilical vein. So how can we know that? Because we need to recall the adaptive features of the blood vessels. For the artery, they have the thicker muscular and elastic vessel wall and with the smaller lumen. And for the blood vessel Y, okay, just like the umbilical vein, so they have the thinner muscular and elastic vessel wall, and then they also have a larger lumen. So that's why once we can recall the adaptive features of the blood vessels, we can label the blood vessels X and Y very easily. And after that, okay, for the first step, we need to identify the blood vessels, and for the second step, we need to determine the blood flow direction. And after we know that the blood flow direction, we can think about the blood pressure, we can think about the blood content, and also the presence of valves. So for the option 1, okay, option 1 is describing the blood vessel X and Y, is talking about the blood pressure of blood vessel Y is lower than that of the blood vessel X. Okay, of course, definitely correct, because for the umbilical vein and for the umbilical artery, okay, is carrying the blood from the fetal's heart, okay, away from the fetal's heart. So that's why the fetal's heart will keep heart beating, boom boom boom, and then that's why the blood pressure will be higher. And for the umbilical vein is carrying the blood from the placenta to the fetal's heart. So that's why for the placenta there is no pumping force, so the blood pressure is lower. And for the second one, there are valves along the length of the blood vessel Y, okay, but not in the blood vessel X. So unsurprisingly, okay, in the vein there is valves, so that's why 1 and 2 are correct. And for number 3, the blood in the blood vessel Y, okay, they have a lower oxygen content, okay, than that in the blood vessel X. For the umbilical artery, is carrying the blood from the fetals go back to the placenta, and umbilical vein is carrying the blood from the placenta go back to the fetal's heart. So that means your mother, okay, she must provide you high oxygen content, okay, in the umbilical vein. So that's why for option 3, okay, is wrong. So that's why the answer is 1 and 2, okay, A only. So for this question, okay, if you would like to know more about how can we determine the blood vessels, okay, and then also the blood content, something like this, you can check the video, okay, in our channel, and then you will know more about it. Just do some revision. And then for question 3, which of the following statements about the placenta is incorrect? Okay, so you can see that for options A, C, D, actually I underlined some keywords, and the answer is B. B is the incorrect description. Later on I will explain it. But for A, C, D, why are they correct? A, C, D, they are the correlated concept, because all of them, they follow the concept that the placenta is the interlocking tissue between the embryonic tissues and the maternal tissues. And then for option D is correct. Placenta is regarded as the site of material exchange between mother and fetals. It can work as the kidney to remove the urea from fetal's blood, and then it can also work as lungs to provide oxygen and then remove carbon dioxide, and then work as the small intestine to provide nutrients to the fetals. So that's why D, okay, is just a basic summary, okay, of the function of the placenta. And why or how can the placenta, okay, function like this is related to the option A and option C. Option C is talking about the placenta is formed from the tissues of the mother and the fetals. And then for option A is talking about it is rich in blood supply. So you can see that from the diagram of the placenta, you can see that maternal blood space, and then the blood vessels of the mother. And at the same time, you can also see the embryonic tissues, okay, the embryonic villi, and inside the villi, there are the capillaries, and of course, in the capillary, there are a lot of blood. So you can see that for placenta, okay, is richly supplied with the blood, no matter for the mother's blood and also for the embryo's blood. Both of the tissues, they interlock together to form this placenta structure. And then for option B is talking about placenta can absorb the shock, okay, and protect the fetals, okay, from the shock. And of course, that's wrong, because the true structure to protect you, okay, should be the amnion. The amnion can secrete the amniotic fluid, and for the fluid, they can act as the cushion to protect the embryo from the mechanical injury, okay, or the shock. So that's why in this question we know that the correct answer is B, because it is a wrong description. Let's take a look in this diagram. It shows the delivery of baby assist with the forceps. So which of the following is the most likely condition for this method to be needed in assisting delivery? So the answer, you can see that the green arrow, okay, the answer is D. The uterine contraction is not sufficiently strong. So the reminder is that during labor, the fetus is pushed out through vagina by the muscular contraction of the uterine wall and the abdominal wall. So for the uterine wall, which is an involuntary contraction, but for the abdominal wall, it is a voluntary contraction. So that's why your mother, she really need to push you forcefully, okay, out of the vagina. So that's why the answer is D. But for options A, B, C, okay, why they are wrong? Okay, so for the first one, okay, the cervix fail to dilate. So the concept is that if the pregnant woman, okay, they are really giving birth, okay, but the cervix fails to dilate. So somehow the first thing we need to do is not using the forceps, but doing the C-section. Okay, cut open the abdominal wall, cut open the uterus wall, and then take you out directly. And then for B, the amnion fails to break. Normally, the uterine muscle wall, they will contract, okay, frequently, more and more frequently, and more forcefully, it will break the amnion. But what if the amnion fails to break, or the amnion has not yet broken? So, okay, can we think that actually it's not really the time, okay, for giving birth? And then for C, the placenta has detached. So normally, the placenta should detach after birth. But accidentally, if you think that, oh, accidentally the placenta is really detached, and then it may block the way, okay, for the baby to go out, okay, or maybe you think that the umbilical cord, okay, will just tangle with the neck of the baby. So that's why we may need to do the C-section to take it out directly. Okay, so let's take a look at the last question. Okay, so which of the following contraceptive methods are based on the same biological principle? So what are the basic biological principles for contraception? Okay, so they are the prevention of ovulation, prevention of fertilization, and prevention of implantation. So for the methods 1, 2, 3, using a condom and then using a diaphragm, that's the way to prevent the fertilization, because for the condom it can avoid, okay, it can prevent the sperm from entering the vagina. And then for number 3, for the diaphragm, even, okay, there are some sperm deposit in the vagina, this diaphragm, okay, with the application of the spermicide, so they can kill the sperm and then do not allow the sperm to enter the uterus. So that's why 1 and 3, they are using the same biological principle. So that's why 1 and 3 only. But for the number 2, intrauterine device actually is used to prevent the implantation. So that's why for the answer, okay, option 2, okay, is not correct. So I hope that for this video you can clarify some concept, okay, and then have a very brief or general idea of doing revision of this chapter. So if you have any question, please leave it below. I will answer you as soon as possible. See you next time. Bye bye.